And the way this program is going to work is we're going to fire off the musket, the mortar, the wall gun, which is behind you right now, and then we'll finish off the cannon down that way. Before we do each of them, I want to talk a little bit about them, give you some background information, and then we'll jump right into the kaboons. But this one, you've got some background information already from Jim. A short land pattern service musket, second model of what's commonly known as a Brown Bess. This type of weapon was used by the British military for over 100 years during the 1700s. It goes through different versions. This is the short land. There's an earlier long land pattern, and eventually the later pattern will be the India pattern, about yay tall. They're all 75 caliber weapons, firing off a 69 caliber lead ball. Really easy to load down. When you fire it though, it's gonna rattle around on the inside and it's gonna affect the trajectory a little bit. You should still be able to hit a me-sized target at about 100 yards if you have practice with this. 200 or 300 yards, it's still deadly, but if you were to get hit, you could take some comfort in knowing whoever shot you probably wasn't aiming at you. It's also gonna be the smallest one that we fire off today. But I'm going to jump right into the loading process since Jim gave us the rest of the information on this. Pour a little bit of powder into the pan here. This will be our priming charge. This piece here that they're calling the hammer back then will sit right on top of that, squeeze it all into place. The rest of the charge, and historically the musket ball would be on the bottom of this paper cylinder, goes down there. Now the musket ball would be on top. We'll put this paper in too because we can. And all that paper would also prevent anything from rolling out. If we had a musket ball in there, it'd be round, and since it's a round barrel, if you point it down, it'd roll right on out. The paper will make sure everything stays where it's supposed to. Okay, that is all loaded up. Now, have you fired guns before?
Yes, I have.
Excellent. A lot of the safety stuff follows over to this. Don't point at anyone, don't pull the trigger until you're ready to fire, all that fun stuff. A couple of extra things though. When you do pull the trigger, there'll be a small explosion right here. It's not anything that's gonna like singe your face or anything, just be ready for it. Since we don't have a musket ball in there, the kick will be very much a gentle tap on the shoulder, hardly feel like much at all. When you do pull the trigger, one of two things is gonna happen. Either it's gonna go or it won't, which sounds pretty simple, but if it doesn't go, give it a good 1-2 count before lowering the gun, because sometimes it takes a second. The commands for this I'll give you are going to be make ready. On the make ready command, take your thumb, pull the cock back once, you'll feel it and hear it click into place. Then take this leather thumb stall and just take that off. At that point it will be ready to go. The next command will be present, which is just take aim that away. And then on the fire command, whenever you're ready, squeeze the trigger and we'll hopefully get a nice kaboom. Sound good?
Okay, yep, so I pull it back two clicks or one?
One click.
Okay.
Right now it's in the half cock, which is the first safety.
Okay.
If you'd like to get a feel for it first and just kind of level it. There we go.
Ooh, I got a target.
Ah, excellent. That'll make things nice and easy for us. Okay, are you prepared?
I am prepared.
Are you prepared? Excellent. Make ready. Ready to go now. Present. And fire. Fire.
Sweet.
And that's all there is to it.
That is sweet.
You have mastered the Brown Bess. And we'll actually go with the one behind you to start things off.
Okay.
Our mortar. And this is the 4 2/5 Cohorn mortar, the smallest type of mortar the British military would have been using during the 1770s. And it's a very unique piece. Everything else here, about 10 other pieces of artillery, and everything else we're going to be firing today are all classified as guns. Straight shooting and solid projectiles, just a hunk of iron that smashes into things. The mortar, as you can see, is very short and at that 45-degree angle. It will take its projectile and instead of shooting it straight, it'll pop it up and rain it down. Great for going around obstacles. It's also not firing off a solid projectile. This is the only weapon here that would fire an explosive. Known as a bomb, look very much like a Wile E. Coyote bomb. Cannonball fuse coming off the end of it, and it's packed full of black powder. Once that fuse burns down, kaboom, the bomb explodes. If you think of the national anthem, the line bombs bursting in air, much bigger versions of this thing that are lobbing those bombs. So very good siege weapon for attacking places. But that does bring up a very good question of what was one doing here during the 1770s? There's nowhere to go attack. The next nearest fortified settlement would have been down at Detroit, which was also under British control, so they're not going to go attack themselves. Instead, Michilimackinac mortar was here to defend the fort, the opposite of what it's supposed to be used for. But before I get into what it's defending against, I'm actually going to begin Veronica with the command of load. She's going to get everything else ready to go for us, because it takes a little while for us to load this up. We're putting in about 5 ounces of black powder, which would be the lifting charge. It would simply lift the bomb up into the air, and for a small mortar like this, it would also light the fuse on the bomb. We sadly can't fire the bomb though. Oh. Put the bomb on top. There's a very slim chance that we'll get a big ball of flame, a big ball of smoke, but it just goes peh instead of kaboom. So we're gonna have to pack it in real good to make sure that it gives us that nice big kaboom. Veronica is going to start the process with a sponge that's been dipped in some water. It'll clean out the inside, but also cool it down. A lot of times these sieges where you're using the mortar in the 18th century might be going on for days, months, even years. There's one siege in the American Revolution that goes on for, I believe it's 3.5 years. It is a long time, and they are using mortars almost entirely during those 3.5 years. And if there's something still hot down there from the last time you fired it, you put down new powder, it'll go off of your face right in the barrel. So safety first. But I like this. Like I mentioned, they're not using it for besieging anything here. They're using it for defense, and what we're defending against is actually that nice beach over there. It's got lots of trees on it today, lots of cottages on it. Back in the 1770s, no cottages of course, but also no trees. They had chopped them all down for building supplies and fuel for the fires. So without those trees, this is one sandy beach. And on that beach, sand dunes would form. Our little sand dune right there formed this winter, and it's not much of anything. But imagine that magnified by no trees around to hold that dirt in place. There were some dunes just to the west of the fort wall that were so large the soldiers couldn't shovel them away, and the commanding officer wrote that hypothetically an army of over 1,000 enemies could use that dune as cover to get within maybe 40 yards of the fort wall. That'd be a pretty big problem. They've got their own cover out there. If they put things on top, they could shoot down into the fort. And if they're behind that dune, you can't really get to them. You could take the cannons and the muskets and shoot at the dune, but it's not going to go through. The sand will just absorb the cannonballs and really slow them down. That's where the mortar comes in. It doesn't have to worry about going through. It can simply go over, raining those explosive bombs down upon the enemy. Luckily for them, they never had to worry about that. No one did come up here and use those dunes to attack Michilimackinac, but it was something they were prepared for. They did a whole lot of training with these weapons because it's a very simple tool. It's basically a bronze bell on its side. Put powder and a bomb in, but to make sure that bomb goes to the right location, the fuse is long enough so that it blows up at the right height. You need to know a lot of geometry, trigonometry, physics. That's why they'd have specialized soldiers for these, members of the Royal Regiment of Artillery. That's what I'm dressed as, the royal blue uniform, rather than the red infantry uniform that we're so used to when we think of the British military. The artillerymen would be trained in all those things. They even had a special rank for handling mortars known as a bombardier, but there was usually only 1 or 2 artillerymen here at Michilimackinac. So they'd be training lots of the infantry soldiers in how to load up and fire these things. But speaking of loading it up and firing, it looks like we've got it loaded up.
So is that what it took to load that thing?
Normally it wouldn't take as long. It'd very much be you'd put the powder in and then just drop the bomb on top, especially for a small one like this. There are much larger ones that might be medium wide. Those ones will take maybe an hour to load because you've got to get the powder in, then you have to hoist the bomb up with this little pulley system, set it into place, make sure the fuse is pointed straight up, because then you light the fuse and then light that fuse to launch the bomb separately. Very frightening as you're doing that, because if something's gone wrong, it's going to blow up. We're going to light our linstock with our totally historically inaccurate flint and steel. This linstock is some cotton cord that's wrapped around a pole. It gives you a nice long reach. That way you're not standing right next to it when it's fired. Even a blank like this can be quite dangerous. The real ones, though, with the cannonballs and the bombs in there, especially dangerous. During the siege of Fort Niagara during the French and Indian War, the British have the French surrounded. They've got all the time in the world just to bombard the French out of Fort Niagara. But the British general in charge of the siege on the opening day walks in front of one of his own mortars by accident as it's going off. The bomb connects about here on him, and the bomb and his head keep on going. The body stays behind. So pretty brutal. But let's fire this one off, shall we?
I guess I should put these on.
Yeah, you'll need those for this one. And I'll also hand you these safety gloves, not glasses. And a couple of safety things with the mortar. What you'll do is take the burning black end of this, touch it to the black that's coming out of the fuse there, and it will either go off immediately or almost a comedic tss, and then go kaboom. We don't have much of a wind, but you might get some smoke blowing back at you. It will just smell funny. It's perfectly fine. And then this one you'll really be able to feel in your chest when it goes off, if we've packed it well enough. I do want to warn you that the chance is very slim, but it's always there, that we'll get a poof. It will look real cool on video, but it will sound kind of sad in person.
Okay.
So be prepared if that happens. I have fingers crossed that it will give us a nice big kaboom. I'm going to hand this to you. The commands for this one will be make ready and fire.
Okay, and just touch it anywhere on the black, or?
Correct.
Okay.
Usually if you want kind of a longer burn, try to touch it down here. If you want a nice quick one, aim for right at the base of the straw there. Are you prepared?
I am prepared. Are you rolling? All right.
Okay, make ready, fire!
Wow.
There we go.
I'm glad I had earplugs in.
Yeah. Like I said, every once in a while it poofs, but when it roars, it roars.
That was awesome.
And you can imagine that bomb flying off in that direction, the fuse burning down, and then secondary explosion after that.
But the part of having to light that fuse and then that fuse, that's...
No thank you.
Yeah, if you get a fizzle, it's like, uh-oh.
We gotta go quick, get a new fuse in there. I'll take your gloves. Veronica, if you'd like to secure the piece for us real quick. So this is our wall gun. It's the musket, except supersized. This is a 98 caliber hand cannon. It counts as a piece of artillery because, again, it is just a musket enlarged. Everything about it is bigger. The amount of powder that goes in there, the musket ball coming out of there, the lock mechanism, it's all just bigger. And it's really good for punching through enemy siege works. If someone did come up and attack Michilimackinac and they brought mortars and they were digging trenches, a typical siege, which you don't have to do for wooden walls like this, but we'll pretend, they've got to get someone to dig those trenches. And they'll usually use these kind of 18th century sandbags known as fascines. Take a bunch of sticks, weave them together, make them inside of it, and then pile dirt and debris in there. And that acts as a sandbag to protect those people digging. Average musket ball will just flatten on that or get stuck inside. This will go right through, making it a very bad day for those sappers and engineers. It's also almost a ye old sniper. Since it is so much larger, the accurate range is also further away because it's got a little bit of a tighter fit on the musket ball. You should be able to hit a me-sized target at 200 yards with this, maybe even 300 yards. So pick off maybe enemy artillery soldiers. The next cannon that will fire later on tonight with its nice big wheels is highly mobile unless you can take the spokes of those wheels out. Now it's not going to go anywhere. The other really nice thing with the wall gun is you could load down one musket ball or a bunch of small ones and turn it into one big shotgun. Good at clearing out anyone in front of you for about 100 yards. So a very powerful weapon. It's also nice and mobile. If someone was attacking this wall here and you're on the other side of the fort, you can just pick it up and make your way to this tower and start defending. The mortar is mobile, but it takes a lot longer to move around. And as the name implies, the wall gun should probably be fired from up on the wall, but we're gonna fire it from that stick right back over there.
Oh, good.
This is a secondary way that you can fire it. The third way that they're firing them is on this small cart. It's got 2 wheels, and then there's a flat board in the middle of it with a hole, and the underside of that board are like iron bars. You roll it out, flip the board up, now the hole's there, you run this through there, kind of like an 18th century human tank. You got a little bit of protection from the iron, and then you're just lobbing off rounds of this. So let's see what we can do. Okay, that's down. Now we need our powder charge, which is in my pocket, I know it is. So here's the musket charge we just fired, the wall gun charge we're gonna fire.
Wow.
We're going from about 125 grains to 300 grains of powder. Should be a nice boom for us. I'm going to load this end first on the wall gun though. Sometimes this thing has a tendency of priming itself, which is real nice. Take our massive ramrod, throw that down there. Let's see if she did it. Close but no cigar. Okay. A couple of safety things with this. It's all the musket, or except bigger. So there'll be more of a gentle shove than a gentle nudge on the shoulder when you fire. It'll be a little bit harder to pull this back as well. So give it a good yank back and it'll usually click into place. If for some reason it doesn't, let me know and I can see if I can figure out if maybe one of these screws is too tight. Commands are going to be make ready, present, and fire.
Okay, make ready, pull the sheet
Pull
off.
that back, yank this. Actually, I'm going to yank this one off first because it's a pain to get off. Yep, I make ready, pull that back, present, take aim, and then on the fire whenever you're ready.
All right.
Sound good?
Yep.
Are you ready? First command, make ready. There we go, I heard a click. Present, and fire. Fire.
Wow. That's like shooting a 12 gauge.
Yes.
And that has nothing in it but powder. Wow.
Quite the big kick to a big gun. And then the tools we have over here will be used for cleaning and loading. This is where you keep all your charges and all your explosives. I'm only going to move them back here for convenience, but historically, these boxes would go well back behind the cannon, and 1 or 2 people of the artillery crew would be running that ammunition forward from a safe distance. That way, if the enemy crew got a lucky shot and was able to take out your ammo, it's taking out your ammo, but not your crew along with it. There. Just like the iron ones above the gate, this is a 6-pounder. It fires a 6-pound ball, but the barrel for this weighs only 550 pounds compared to the iron ones over 850. Because they are lighter weight, you can put it on a field piece just like this. And these big wheels will let you move it really anywhere you need to on a battlefield. One of my favorite quotes from the American Revolution comes in 1777 when an artillery officer is quoted to have said, "Anywhere a goat can go, a man can go. Anywhere a man can go, he can drag a gun." They're not talking about muskets or wall guns. This is the type of gun they're talking about. You can get it up a sheer cliff if you have to. Takes a lot of rope and a lot of people pulling, but you can get it up there. It also fires off a couple different ammunitions. There's the stereotypical cannonball that could go up to a mile. If you look back behind me on the bridge where the cables come down from the tower, they end in that big cement block. That's about a mile from us. Or if you happen to be downtown, the Starline Ferry Dock is also a mile from this location. You'd hit something around that area. Not knowing what you'd hit, but you'd hit something. More accurate range, about half a mile. Now you can hit something the size of our blockhouse up there. If the enemy still doesn't get the hint and they keep coming closer, at about 400 yards, you can load down case shot. It's a big tin can packed full of musket balls. Turn this into one big shotgun. Clear out everything in front of you. So very powerful, very deadly weapon. Here at Michilimackinac, they never got used as weapons though, because no one attacked the place. So they're mostly firing them off for salutes. Anytime someone important visited, new commanding officer, native leaders, they get a blast of the guns. Special holidays would have blast of the guns. And then they're also firing for a whole lot of training. Other than that, just a lot of cleaning happening here, keeping all this stuff ready to go. Got a bunch of different markings on the barrel as well. There's what looks like a date down here. That's actually the weight in hundredth weights. The first number is that number times a hundredth weight, which I think for the British is 120. The second number is times a quarter hundredweight. The third number is just a normal number. It all maps out to 556 though. After that, we've got W. Bowman Fletch 1755. Fletch is just Latin for made by, so W. Bowman would have been the manufacturer in 1755 for the original one. This is a copy of the original that's on display in Pittsburgh. After that, we got our touch hole, same spot we'll put the fuse just like we did on the mortar. Then we've got the cipher of King George. This one is GR2, so George Rex II. Go to England today and they're changing all the mailboxes to CR3 for Charles Rex III. Mark of the Lord of Ordnance, the guy in charge of all the artillery back then. The British Army and the British Artillery are two separate divisions. So the Army's got the Commander-in-Chief, the Artillery has the Lord of Ordnance, his stamp goes on there. And finally, we finish off with some nice flowers. We've got a clover, a rose, and a thistle. Any guesses on what that stands for?
I have no idea.
I'll give you a hint. Technically a four-leaf clover. What country do you think of?
Ireland?
We've got Ireland, the Scottish thistle, and the English rose. So the United Kingdom just in flower format. So just a little bit of decoration. Other nations like France, the King Louis would put on his cannons the final arguments of kings in Latin to be like, if kings are fighting, this is how they're gonna finish their arguments. If you capture another nation's cannon, you put your own marks on there. A lot of the original ones, especially that were captured at Yorktown, have a little US stamp right there to be like, well, sure, the king, but above him is our stamp. Nana na boo boo, what's our cannon now? Well, that's all the stuff you need to know about this. I think we can jump into firing this bad boy off.
All right.
I'm gonna have you come, actually, I need to grab you gloves first because this part gets messy sometimes. Pound and a half of black powder. We'll be using about 12 ounces wrapped in historically inaccurate tin foil. Historically, it would have been in a flannel bag that'd be tied right to the cannonball. Load it all down in one go. Bring this up here. Put it right there. Then when the artillery crews are loading, they're trained not to grip the pole. That way, if it does go off, they're not death gripping and their hand going along with it as it comes flying out. Luckily for us, it didn't go off. I can now tell Veronica to prime. She's gonna grab a brass pin. Artillery soldiers would actually have these on their uniforms. Now that that charge is sitting right below that hole, she's able to open it up, grab another fuse, and insert that right in there. We cheat and use paper straws with black powder because they're nice and safe. Historically, it would have been a tin tube packed full of black powder. You could pick and prime in one motion. At this point, though, the cannon is primed and loaded. If you actually needed to aim it, though, there's a couple of things you can do. There's a large screw right here. As you twist that, that'll change the angle or elevation of the gun, and the spike coming off the back there can be lifted up to go left or right. Usually, though, they're just looking down the barrel, and if it's pointed at it, you're probably going to hit at least close to it. Maybe after one or two aiming shots, you can really dial it in and be very accurate with these. Some of their math they're using, they're trying to get the cannonballs to skip on the ground. That way they keep going almost like a lethal bowling ball, or they're even doing what I would count as trick shots, getting it to spin just the right way that when it hits, it almost does a 90-degree turn, It might take 3 or 4 times to get it perfect, but if they get dialed in, they can be quite accurate, even though this is a smooth bore weapon. But I think it's time to fire this bad boy off. I'm gonna light our fuse once, or not our fuse, our linstock. If we actually had a 6-pound cannonball in there, to send that 6-pound object a mile in the other direction, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the whole carriage, which is almost 1,000 pounds of bronze and wood, would roll back 4 to 6 feet and come off the ground 18 inches. Ours, since we're just firing a blank, will rock back maybe that much. This has been soaked in saltpeter, one of the ingredients of black powder. So it'll smolder instead of exploding, but sometimes it smolders a little bit slowly. There we go. So this will be just like the mortar. Make ready and fire will be the commands. Any questions?
Nope. Am I in the right place?
You are. So are you all prepared?
Yes, I am.
I'll be over here.
You ready?
Make ready, fire! Wow. God save the king. And happy Christmas in July.
Wow. That was nice.
I can actually hear it echoing off the Upper Peninsula every once in a while.
Yeah, I think I heard a truck.
Yeah, nice. But that is our last piece of artillery, folks. I hope you had a good time. If you got any questions on anything we've fired today, or just anything in general, feel free to ask. I love talking about stuff.